Are you wanting to play a fighter and considering playing a champion? And are you wondering what feats you might want to take? Well, you're in luck, because behind today's secret door, the Champion Fighter Quickspin Feat Spotlight. So behind today's secret door, the Champion Fighter Quickspin Feat Spotlight. This is Secret Door, a channel devoted to in-depth discussion about Dungeons & Dragons, and my name is Matt Morich. Alright, I have started a Patreon. If you're interested in supporting the channel, your help would be greatly appreciated and much needed. And many thanks to Marcelo, Doug, and Jamie for your support. The link will be in the pinned comment and in the description. All right, you should probably check the pinned comment, but because of the briefness that I think this video will have, I don't think that you'll find too much in there, at least I hope not. But sometimes there's omissions or things don't make it through the editing process that I would like to include, or things that I might have forgotten will be added in the pinned comment, or I could have made mistakes. In fact, right before I sat down to shoot, I double-checked something, and boom, a mistake. Which is a real pain because I worked pretty hard on it. And I was really hoping that it could be actually one of the more attractive options for you guys, but it won't work. All right, so in principle here, instead of doing the full test drive, the fighter really, the selections, the choices you have to make as a fighter, as a player, you have feats. You have a lot of ASIs, which are going to probably be converted into feats. And those are your real big decisions. And in the new rules with feats, they have changed them in such a way that it particularly benefits the fighter above all other classes. And this is somewhat interesting because you could very well argue that the fighter got hosed the most in this rule set because they couldn't take a real martial feat at level 1 as a human or a custom lineage character. But they make up for it a bit in what I refer to as the golden path. And what is the golden path? That is that the fighter character gets an ASI at 6th level. That's part of the golden path. The other part is that all of the martial feats, pretty much all feats really, are now what we used to call half feats. So you get a +1 stat bump. But because racing to 20 is important for every character, it may not be absolutely essential to hit to 20 at level 8, but that should be your goal. It's certainly my goal when I'm creating characters. What the fighter has available to them now in the Golden Path is a way to take feats at every stage at 4, 6, and 8 and hit 20 at the same time. If they put their 15, whether that be for strength or dex, and their +2 into that stat. So by having that 17 as a starting stat, and then getting 3 sequential +1s and putting them all into that stat, you hit 20. And at the same time, you've racked up 3 feats. Now, there's really not other characters that can do this. I mean, sure, everybody could put the 17 in and get that stat bump at level 4 and therefore be at 18. And then at level 8, you're probably forced to take an ASI. Not always, but generally speaking, you're going to be taking an ASI at level 8. And then, of course, you're waiting till level 12. And a lot of campaigns, by the time you're about level 13, 14, you're in the final, the campaign may actually be effectively over by that point. So level 12, getting a feat at level 12 is not that, you're not going to be enjoying it for very long. Let's just put it that way. So a player that is playing a fighter enjoys this special advantage of being able to grab a whole bunch of feats all in a row, right in the meat of where the campaign is probably at its most interesting. So you're sacrificing a little bit on the front-loading part, but you are really able to grab a whole bunch of feats and be simultaneously advancing your primary scores up to 20. So this is what I call the golden path. It's you're doing everything for your character all at once, and you're doing it in a very rapid sequence. But it's very important that you have that 17 in whatever the stat's going to be, whether it be strength or dex, or this doesn't work. You're going to be off by one, and that does you no good at all. So it doesn't really matter overly much what particular race the character is. And in the things that I'm going to talk to you about today, I'm going to talk to you about packages of feats and how those numbers will bear out. I'm using the champion because the champion is vanilla, but it does, of course, have advantages to it. It's got a critical window that it gets at level 3 of scoring a critical hit on a 19 or 20. So to some degree, the feats that I've chosen were specifically chosen for the idea of being able to capitalize on that higher crit chance, or when special things happen when you crit. But in general, these are all pretty much feats that just about any fighter is going to be taking regardless. In that package that I mentioned before that doesn't work, this was showcased to the best effect, and unfortunately, it doesn't work. So what I'm going to do, this is, like I said, this is going to be very brief here. So we've explained what the golden path is. So at the time you're at the end of the golden path, when you're at level 8 and you have your 3 feats, at level 8, what will you look like? How much damage will you be doing per round? I'll be explaining each suite of feats, what those feats are, and how much damage it will do, and I'll break down how that damage is arrived at. Now, I should note here that none of these are going to be blow the world up kind of damage, not like a barbarian can do, or the fiend Pact of the Blade warlock could do. It doesn't have to be a fiend, but what a Pact of the Blade warlock could do. But it's good. It's very good damage that you'll be doing, and you'll be doing other things along with it. Okay, so our first package is going to be, I'm going to specify the weapon, and then I'll specify fighting style if applicable. If I don't mention a fighting style, that's just because I don't think there's one particular fighting style that's going to be a must-have with that particular weapon. So this one is a Maul. Now, Maul has topple, and that's a very important thing to know about the Maul. When you hit and score damage, you force a Constitution saving throw on the target. If they fail that save, they are prone. This is not a once per round kind of a thing, so if you were to hit them 3 times, they have to make 3 saves. So for the fighting style, we're going to take heavy weapon, and the Maul's a 2d6 weapon, so that will mean that instead of averaging 7, it will average 8. We're going to take Great Weapon Master, Sentinel, and Heavy Armor Master. Now, what sequence you take those feats in is, of course, very important. So you can make an argument for any one of these, but I would say I would probably put Sentinel last, but that really depends on your DM. In my opinion, Sentinel is nice to have. It will show up from time to time. Pretty much once in a combat, I think, is when it will activate. That's the assumption I have to make with Sentinel. With some DMs, it's going to happen every single round. And with Heavy Armor Master, as nice as the feat is, it's a defensive feat. So I wouldn't want to take it first, but the argument, meaning at 4th level, but Heavy Armor Master is going to have its greatest value in the early levels. So defensively, at 4th level, it's going to be shrugging off damage, small damage, the amount of the ratio that it's shrugging off compared to the damage that you're taking is going to be at its highest point then. But in general, I would be taking Great Weapon Master at 4 and probably taking Heavy Armor Master at 6 and then Sentinel at 8. But that's entirely up to you. One other overall assumption I am making here in this, and again, remember that I'm thinking about this in terms of building a champion, and you can kind of deconstruct this for another fighter. But I am, for an origin feat, the only one that matters is taking Magic Initiate and taking Find Familiar. In all these assumptions, in all the damage that I'm going to be outlining here, I'm assuming that you have Find Familiar and that you're taking the Owl, and the Owl is giving you the help action. So your first attack in all these is going to be with advantage. In some cases, because of the nature of the weapon, advantage may carry forward, or it may only be a percentage chance that you're going to have advantage. And by that, what I mean, even if you have advantage, it's certainly not mathematically certain that you will attack. But if you had, say, something like Vex or Topple, you're going to have a certain particular chance of having that work. And if it does work, then you're going to have an elevated chance over 60%. So in the case of Topple or Vex, so the first attack in every sequence will have advantage from the familiar. After that, if you have Vex or you have Topple, you'll have, I'm assigning a 72% chance of hitting. So 60% would be the normal, 85% would be with advantage. Half the time, it'll work or it won't work. So I'm saying half the time, it'll be 72% chance for average. So with action surges, I'm assuming that you'll have 2 of those available to you in a day, with 3 encounters in a day, each lasting 4 rounds each. So 12 rounds of combat. And in that 2 action surges, I'm going to note what those are by amortizing them across those 12 rounds. If you have a weapon like that has Topple or Vex that will provide advantage, I will be assuming, especially with Topple, that you will be using those action surges when the enemy is prone. And I'll note that here as I will with Maul. So with Maul, your average damage, your base average damage for an 8th level character with a 20 strength is going to be 27.92. Now with that higher crit threat that you have as a champion fighter, and with the ability to drop a character to 0, I'm going to assume that the Great Weapon Master effect of Hue will activate about 6 times, which is significant, but that's, I normally assume 5, but with that extra crit threat, I'm going to assume 6. That will bump your damage, your DPR, up to 32.22. With Sentinel activating once per combat, that number will advance to 34.38. Your action surges will add a pretty good number of 5.06 to your DPR. That puts your DPR at 40.14. That's pretty significant. And you are getting a very interesting combination effect here. When Sentinel does get activated, if you hit the opponent, they're going to, their speed is going to drop to 0. Any opportunity attack by Sentinel, while you have Sentinel, any opportunity attack will drop their speed to 0. And if they fail their saving throw against Topple, they're prone and cannot get up. While you are prone, of course, the target will have disadvantage on their attack rolls, and anyone within 5 feet of them will get advantage on their attack rolls. Anyone further than 5 feet away will get disadvantage on their attack rolls against that target. And this is happening on their turn, obviously, because it's an opportunity attack. So it can be a very crippling thing if it's done in the wrong sequence. If they do something in the wrong sequence, let's say they move before they were to attack or try and take the disengage action before they were to get an attack off, and all this were to happen, their turn is completely wasted. That damage from the Maul is pretty much the highest that you're going to get of any of these suites. And it has that combo, which is very nice. And you're going to get Heavy Armor Master. The next package is with Lance. And with the Lance actually has Topple as well. It has the Heavy and the Reach properties. So we're going to take Great Weapon Master, we're going to take Polearm Master, and we're going to take Sentinel. That damage will come out to 28.6 for your base damage, going up to 32.79 when Great Weapon Master activates. Again, I'm assuming about 6 times. Now, with the Polearm, you're going to have the reach effect. So when an opponent comes in within your reach, you'll be able to do an attack. However, it is not listed as an opportunity attack. It says you may make a melee attack. So you will not drop them to 0 speed when they come in with your reactive reach attack. But between that and with Sentinel activating, I would assume that each of those will happen probably about once per combat. So this is twice in each combat you'll be using your reactions. And that puts your damage up with those 4 reaction attacks to 36.215 DPR. Your 2 action surges would add to your DPR of about 4.19. This would put your total up to 40.4. Very high. And you also get the topple and sentinel drop to 0 speed combo. There's one other nice little wrinkle with the lance as well, and that is that if you are mounted, it can be used one-handed. And that's a particularly interesting thing to note here because, of course, the champion gets a second fighting style. Now notice here, I didn't pick a fighting style. The reason why is the damage increase you're going to get from taking heavy weapons as a fighting style it's going to change. Those numbers would go up slightly. It's just not very significant. So I would be inclined to just want to take something else, like maybe just the +1 to AC. But here's the interesting point to note is if you're going to be an 8th level character by this point, if you were using Lance, if you did have some reasonable way of having some kind of a mount, at 7th level, you get a second fighting style. You could take dueling just for those particular moments. So there are 2 more packages that I'll note here. I'm not trying to say that these are the only packages that are available. You'll notice that I don't even that the Greatsword is not mentioned here. There's a particular reason for that, and that is that you're going to be using. Remember specifically, I was talking about trying to create higher crit chances and everything else. So I have you having magic initiate with advantage. When you're attacking with advantage, Graze has less value. So I didn't even go with Greatsword. It's still going to be a perfectly valid option to take. It's just not one that I particularly highlighted here. So the next, we're going to go with the standard polearm thing. We had the lance with the topple. We're going to be using now the halberd, which has cleave. Now, with this package, you're taking Polearm Master, Great Weapon Master, and Sentinel. With all 3 attacks, you'll be getting 25.97 in DPR. Once cleave is factored in, it's going to be 28.79. This number will go up to 32.2 with Hue. I'm assuming that'll activate about 6 times with the crit range, etc., etc. And then with 1 Sentinel activation and 1 Reach activation from the Polearm Master, you're going to go up to 35.64. And after your action surge, you will go up to 38.58. So with this, you don't get any kind of defensive option like Heavy Armor Master, and you don't have the combo effect of something like Topple with Sentinel, but it's still viable. If this is what you want to do, it's still going to be doing very good damage. The damage is just behind the others. But I would think that the packages that offer those defensive options and have higher damage and the combo effect would probably be preferable. And finally, I just went in with 2-weapon fighting as well. So obviously you're going to be taking dual wielding feat, and you're going to be taking the fighting style. Now your base damage for this is going to be 29.22, and you're getting 4 attacks. Now with the 2-weapon fighting style, I'm assuming that 1 weapon will be a short sword and 1 will be a scimitar. So you'll have one, the scimitar has Nick, they're all light weapons, and the short swords have Vex. So you're going to be chaining having advantage from the familiar, and then chaining advantage from Vex, and then to that will allow for one of the bonus attacks to also have advantage. The final one would not have advantage. So in this case, you would have advantage on 3 of the 4 attacks, which is nice. That number is still 29.22. But if you did take something like Piercer, because remember, we're only talking about 1 feat that was selected here. If you took something like Piercer, and that's weird that short swords actually do piercing damage, but they do, then that number would go up slightly to 30.625. Whether that's worth it or not is up to you. After 2 action surges, your damage would be 32.76. So very much on the lower end of the damage output. And that's not to say that the dual wielding is bad. It's just simply that you don't really have any bonuses. You don't have rage bonuses, you don't have anything that might augment having 4 attacks. That's where dual wielding really shines. But because this is only 1 feat that was taken in particular, 2 if you went with Piercer, you could take Heavy Armor Master very easily, and I'm sure you would. So I wouldn't recommend this one in particular, but if that's what you really want to do. The damage differential is, 32 to 40, that's not inconsequential. 8 points of damage around, you are a fighter. But, it's still viable. It is definitely still viable. The important thing here is that you're playing the character that you want to play and showing that you can do solid to very good damage, not blow the world up damage, but very solid to even like borderline great damage, and get to 20 and have a fighting style that's going to have the possibilities for combos and what have you. Now, I want to reiterate that this was all in mind for getting the most value out of that crit range with the champion. I should also note that at level 10, the champion gets the ridiculous ability to have essentially unlimited, well, not quite unlimited, but it gets a heroic inspiration at the beginning of every turn if it doesn't already have one. So your ability to reroll in all of these, I can't even imagine how that will affect things. But that's just an unbelievably great ability. So the champion is very solid. It's not particularly complex. None of the fighters are all that particularly complex. But it is that heroic inspiration one is awfully fun. That's a fantastic 10th level power. So those particular packages are the ones that I think are going to get the most value out of being a champion in particular. Obviously, if you're playing another fighter, the nuances of that class are going to maybe call out for different things. But these ones are, I think, some of the best. You'll notice that I didn't even go into ranged combat at all. I think that this is the best use for the champion. All right, so like I said, short, quick idea for a video. There will be another test drive coming. It's just going to take a little bit longer. So that's all I've got. If you enjoyed the video, please like, please share, please subscribe. And if you're stuck and you don't know where to go, you can always search for a secret door. Until next time, I cast bless on all of you.